What's going on, guys? This is Greg, and you're watching part 6 of the Nuclear Attack Survival series. And on this part, I'm going to discuss with you essential gear that you would need to survive a nuclear attack. So stick with me. Alright guys, so first thing that you're going to want is you're going to want a way to measure how much radiation you're receiving, and you're also going to want to be able to detect it in your environment. So what I have here is I have an EcoTest Therapy. That's a radiation dosimeter. You can hear it clicking right now. It's measuring normal background radiation at 0.14 microsieverts per hour. This company's called EcoTest. They're out of Ukraine. They make very good gear. I highly recommend this dosimeter here. It has 4 modes. You know, it can detect radiation in the environment, so it functions as a Geiger counter, so you can see where there's any type of radiation hotspots, or you can measure the radiation around you. Then it also has your dosimeter. So what it does is it measures the accumulated dose from when the time that the dosimeter is turned on, when you put the batteries in, or when, you know, if you put the batteries in, it resets it, so it measures your accumulated dose. And then it also has an alarm clock and just a regular clock as well. Another thing that I like about this one is that it has the ability to set a threshold, and what you could do with that is you could set a threshold for any range of radiation levels. You set the threshold, and basically once the radiation reaches above the threshold, an alarm sounds. It's like a really loud alarm. And also this will actually hibernate, so it basically stays off the whole time, except when you press the mode button. If you just depress the mode button here, it'll turn the meter on, and it'll start monitoring. It'll detect what's in the environment, and it'll stay on for, I think, about 2 minutes or so. And if you don't touch it, it'll just shut off and go into hibernation. Now, that's very good because, like, see, what I have it here set up is on my nightstand in my room. I have a threshold set on this dosimeter, and what I can do is I have the threshold set typically at like 0.30 microsieverts per hour, because typically background radiation, it shouldn't really go above like 0.15 or 0.20 microsieverts per hour. Anything above 0.20 or 0.25, there's some type of unnatural source, you know. So I have it set pretty low at 0.30, and basically what'll happen is, I've actually had it happen to me before while I was sleeping. It turned on a couple of times. I don't know if there's a nuclear power plant near my house about 30 miles away. Maybe there was like a small release or something, but basically the meter, the dosimeter will turn off. See, it turned off already. You see the screen is blank, and it'll stay off until you either push the button to if you want to detect the radiation in the environment, you push the mode button here, or if the radiation goes above the threshold that you set, then it'll turn on, and it'll be like a very loud alarm. So, you know, that's very good, especially, like, you know, because you can have this, and it's very good on batteries. It uses 3 AAA batteries, and actually I just recently replaced the batteries, but probably you know, over the summer, so maybe a few months ago. Today is December 13th, 2017, so, you know, I've already had a few months ago I replaced it, and it's still at full charge. But when I first bought this meter a couple years ago, I bought it in, I think, 2015. I bought it in 2015, so I had the original batteries that came with it from Ukraine in this meter in the fall. I bought it in like probably the fall of 2015, and I replaced them. And I replaced them a year and a half later, this summer. And it was still, the batteries, I could have still kept them. They were down to like 2 bars. You know, it's not like they were at the low level or something, because what they have is they have like 4 bars. it was down to 2 bars, so it was still like 50%, but I don't like to have it go down low. I like to have always fresh batteries, you know, so I replaced the batteries. But I bet if I kept the original batteries, it would have lasted another few months, or another year probably, easily. So with 3 AAA batteries, unless you're going to be using this like on a regular basis, if you're like going around and you're hunting radioactive materials or something and you're constantly using this, if it just hibernates and you have it on your nightstand, I mean, you know, and you occasionally turn it on here and there, I mean, one set of batteries on this thing is going to last you a long time. You know, it's very efficient, so this is very good for a survival situation, for a bug out bag, just to have in your house, you know. This is essential, especially like in the previous video in part 5, I discussed making shelter, and this is where having a dosimeter is critical. Not just a dosimeter, but an ability to measure the radiation around you in your environment it's critical, because let's say like you build your shelter, you know, you're going to want to be able to detect how much radiation is in your shelter, and then you're going to want to detect how much radiation is outside your shelter, you know, because at some point you're going to want to obviously get out of your shelter, so you're going to want to have a way to measure how safe it is out there. You know, you're going to want to know what the level is, because if there was a nuclear attack, you know, it's going to be hard for people. If there's a nuclear attack, you know, let's say the power is probably going to be wiped out. You're not going to have your television set. You're not going to be able to just turn on, you know, your local news channel, or, you know, whatever, your emergency alert system. You know, how are you going to know when, you know, because how are the authorities going to be able to communicate with you that the radiation levels are safe? Plus, you don't want to trust the authorities. You want to trust yourself. You want to have some way of measuring radiation dose that you're taking in, you know, because what happens is radiation, it works is that it accumulates inside of your body, you know, so you want to know how much you're accumulating over time. You know, so that's where you need to have a way of detecting, and you also need to have a way of measuring your accumulated dose. That's critical, especially if you're going to be going out. Let's say like you need to go out and get supplies after a few days. Let's say you sheltered it, you built yourself a shelter like I talked about in part 5, and you know, let's say you have to go out of your shelter after 2-3 days to refill on water and food, and just to check what's going on outside. You know, maybe you want to get some more supplies or something. Or let's say, you know, so you're going to want to know what your accumulated dose is, and you want to make sure your accumulated dose doesn't go above a certain level, because once your accumulated dose goes above certain levels, then you're at risk for cancer, for long-term damage to your DNA, permanent damage to your DNA and cancer, or short-term effects, which would be like acute radiation poisoning. You know, so I'll do a separate video. I'll tell you what the levels are, so you know what levels are safe and what's not safe. But you're going to want to measure your accumulated dose, so this way you know how much radiation you're taking in, and this way you can see how much, you know, time you have outside in the radiation. Another thing is also, if you're you know, if you're work in a city, you know, you may want to have one of these. It doesn't have to be this one particularly, this brand. It could be any brand. You're going to want a radiation dosimeter with an ability to detect, and you're going to want to keep that on you, you know. They also have stickers that you can buy, that you either put it on your shirt. Typically they use those in Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security. They have stickers that they can put on each other, so they can monitor each other's dosages by looking at the sticker. Basically what it is just a color-coded, different colors show you how much radiation you know, you're taking in. And so like people you know, buddies can look at each other's stickers, and they could see how much radiation they've absorbed. You can also look those up. They're called like rad triage. If you go on Amazon, just look up like radiation stickers, or you know, they also have ones that you could put in your wallet. But I prefer something like this, you know. This is nice and heavy duty. It comes with a little clip here. It's like a waterproof case with a clip. You know, this is a very good meter. I'm going to do a review on this one. This is very good. This company, EcoTest, they're out of Ukraine. This meter was probably about, this dosimeter was probably about, I think I paid like $160 for it. It typically goes between like 140 and like 180 depending on, you know, where you buy it from. So it's obviously not cheap, you know, but it could save your life, you know. It could really help you out, especially if you're working in an urban area. You're going to want to be able to detect the radiation around you, because if, let's say, a dirty bomb goes off, or there's a nuclear emergency, let's say there's a nearby power plant, you know, has a meltdown or something, or there's a radiation release, you know, let's say there's some type of a, you know, nuclear you know, emergency from your power plant, or, you know, some type of terrorist attack with a nuclear weapon, either an illicit weapon or dirty bomb. You're not going to know, because radiation is invisible. Can't hear it, can't smell it, can't see it. The only way is with the Geiger counter and with the dosimeter. So that's critical. You want to have one of these. You want to have it in your purse. You want to have it in your everyday carry. You want to have one of these. It doesn't have to be this model. They have other ones. I know this company EcoTest, they also have like a watch that you could put on, and basically it's the size of like a standard watch, and what it does is it just has different colors. So not only is there sound, but it's also colors, because sometimes you can't hear the sound, right? So it has like green, yellow, and red for different levels of how bad it is. You know, green would be like low, yellow is like medium, and then red is like really bad. And it also has clicking noises as well. There's also a company that makes like a keychain. It's a black one. It's an American company. It's called, I think it's called like Nuke Alert. And it's just basically like a black keychain, and you put it on your keys, and if there's a high level of radiation, it'll start making an alarm, you know. But I prefer something like this because it has a dosimeter. It's not just a detector. It doesn't just detect radiation, it's a dosimeter, so it measures my accumulated dose, which is very important, you know, especially if you're in a fallout situation and you're in a fallout shelter. You're going to want to measure how much radiation you're taking in. You know, you're going to want to measure how much radiation is outside. You're going to want to have those abilities. So get yourself some type of radiation dosimeter. These are very critical. Now the next thing is you're going to want to have some way of protecting your lungs. You know, this is an Israeli gas mask. These are issued to civilians in Israel. If anybody knows anything about protecting lungs from nuclear, biological, chemical agents, it's the Israelis. This particular model is probably about $35 on Amazon, and it comes with a filter. You're going to want to buy a new filter though. The filters are about $10. So the filter that comes with it, you can keep it just for training purposes, because it's probably going to be like 15 or 20 years old. So keep the old one for training purposes, put it on, and walk around your house one day with it. Get used to how it feels, because it's a little bit thicker. You're not going to be able to breathe like you normally breathe, because it's got to come through the filter. So put it on, test it out, you know, get used to how it feels, how it's going to be to breathe with it, and then buy yourself a new filter. These are about $10, okay? You can buy these for $10. The company is called Shalon, S-H-A-L-O-N, Shalon. You can look that up, and you want to find yourself a fresh filter that's been manufactured within, you know, at least the last 5 to 10 years. You don't want anything like from the 90s. You know, anything before like 5-10 years ago, you don't want that. You want something relatively new. These masks, they can take any 40 millimeter NATO thread. So that's why I like it. So for $30, you can't go wrong. You could buy one of these for everybody in your house, you know, for every person in your family. They even have youth version, because this is made for civilians. So they have an adult, and then they have a youth. So you can buy it for your whole family. Keep it in your basement. So this way, if there's a nuclear attack and you got a shelter, you're going to want to protect your lungs, because if you breathe in the radiation, you breathe in radioactive particles, it's going to damage your lungs. You're going to get cancer. So you want to avoid that. Now, obviously, if you have a big briefcase, or if you carry a backpack with you to work, or you carry like a little, you know, like a urban day pack that a lot of people carry nowadays. They have those urban style backpacks that they keep their lunch and their stuff for work. You know, you could easily fit this in there. You see, if you can fold this up, You fold it, because this is rubber, you fold it up, and this together, it's really not that big, you know. Together this is maybe like 3 inches wide, 2 to 3 inches wide, you know. You can fit it in. It's like the size of a book. Just put it in your backpack, you know. If you're worried about people thinking you're crazy, you know, then at least go to Home Depot and get yourself, get yourself one of those N95 masks that you wear when people paint or when they do insulation, when the contractors put insulation up to protect their lungs from fiberglass. Get yourself like 5 or 6 of those and keep them in your you know, keep them in your briefcase, or keep them in your day pack when you go to work, or even keep them in your drawers at your office or something. Keep a few in your office. But you're definitely going to want to have this at home at least. You definitely want this at home with you, preferably if you could take it with you to work, especially if you work in a big city like New York, LA, Chicago, a major nuclear target. You're going to want to carry something like this. You know, it doesn't weigh anything, and who cares what people think, you know. Just look at 9/11. A lot of people have lung problems now after 9/11 because all the asbestos from the buildings, because people, you know, they're not prepared. They don't have stuff to protect their lungs, you know, and they were breathing all that stuff in, you know. So, you know, and like I said, you want to have one of these on you. If you're going into a major city, you want to have this with you, because if something happens, you're not going to know. You know, if there's a radiological emergency, you're not going to be able to detect it. It's invisible. So you want to have one of these so you know what's going on. And then you're going to want to have a way to filter your air. Now, the final thing that you should carry with you, you should definitely have this in like a bug out bag, a get home bag, and even when you go to work, you're going to want to have it in your briefcase. It's all it is, and you're going to want to have some at home. All it is potassium iodide. This is made by a company called Iosat, and basically these are 14 pills. Each pill is, you take 1 pill a day if you're an adult. And let's see, they have different instructions here. You know, generally for children, you're going to want to take half a tablet for children that are, you know, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but essentially you have 14 tablets here. For an adult, you take 1 tablet each day. And what it does is it protects your thyroid, because, you know, your thyroid, it hoards iodine. That's its job. It hoards iodine. So what happens is if there's a nuclear emergency, there's something called iodine 131, which is a radioactive form of iodine that's given off after a nuclear explosion, or any kind of, you know, any type of nuclear reaction gives off radioactive iodine, especially like a fission reaction with enriched uranium. You know, even like your power plants too. So basically, what this is going to do is your thyroid is going to uptake the iodine in these pills, and your thyroid is going to become saturated with the iodine from these pills, and therefore your body's not going to absorb the radioactive version, because if it absorbs the radioactive version, guess what? You're going to have your thyroid removed, or, you know, you're going to have a tumor. You're going to get cancer, you know. So this will save your thyroid, you know. And all you do is just take 1 pill a day. You're going to want to make sure that this gets protected. You know, you don't want to expose this to extreme temperatures, so you don't want to leave it in like a hot car or like a freezing cold car. You don't want to cut this, the metal here, the foil. You want to protect the foil. I even leave mine with the plastic intact. You want to keep this protected. You don't want to have this crushed or cut or destroyed or exposed to air or extreme temperatures. So you want to put it someplace that's relatively safe. If you have it in a backpack, you want to tuck it in somewhere where it's not going to get scratched, or it's going to, you know, get crushed or something like that, you know. So get yourself at least, you know, you're going to want to carry one of these with you to work, and you're going to want to have a few of these at home, you know. So if something happens, you can start taking these. As soon as there's an emergency, you pop the first pill, and you keep taking it, you know, until you run out. And then you also can give it to your kids as well. Kids are going to typically use much smaller dosage, probably half or to a quarter of what, you know, your dose is going to be. So that's it, guys. You know, you're going to want your detection and dosimeter. You're going to want a way to protect your lungs. And then you're going to want a way to protect your thyroid. Those are the 3 critical essential gear that you can get that's It's not expensive. The dosimeters are going to be expensive, I'm not going to lie. You're not going to get a good dosimeter for less than $80. You know, you're going to expect to pay like, you know, even the cheaper ones now are like $80 to $100, you know. They also have ones for your smartphones now, but I don't like that. So, you know, expect to pay between $80 and $150 for a good dosimeter. You know, depending on what brand you go with. These pills, I got them for like $5 on Amazon. You know, these are super cheap. You know, you can buy like, you know, a whole bunch and just store it in your house. And then these filters from Israel, these are $10. These are high quality. It's like a metal. This is like a metal one, and this was like $35. You know, so you know you really can't go wrong with that. So that's basically it for this video. In part 7, I'm sorry, I'm going to go over decontamination, how you can decontaminate yourself if you get exposed to radioactive fallout, and other things that you're going to want to take into consideration. So I'm going to talk about protecting yourself from your environment and decontamination after the fallout occurs, and after there's already a nuclear situation where there's nuclear contamination around you. There's certain things you're going to want to do, you know, and you're also going to want to know how to decontaminate yourself. So look out for that video that's going to be coming soon. So I'll just leave you with this clicker so you can hear what it sounds like. We'll just monitor for a minute. Looks like it's just normal background radiation right now. So thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, comment, and press thumbs up if you can. And I'll see you on the next part. Take care. Be safe. God bless.